Now let's solve the Roman to integer problem on LeetCode. I highly recommend you go through the description before watching this video. I'm going to just go through the examples real quick. So if they give us a string S which contains the Roman numerals III, this is equivalent to 3. And for example, in example 2, if they gave us LVIII, since L is equal to 50, V is equal to 5, and then III is equal to 3, we'd get 58. And then in this example, similarly, we need to go through each element or each letter, see what it's equivalent to, and then sum them up. But the most important thing to note is that if we have two consecutive elements where the first one is less than the second one, so for example here C is less than M, since C is equal to 100 and M is equal to 1000, then we'd have to subtract them and then add it to the sum. So let's go ahead and begin coding. So the first thing we need to do is we're going to store these symbols and their values into a hash map. So let's go ahead and do that. Hash map that takes character, which would be our symbol, and integer, which would be our value, and we can just call this anything. Roman to integer equals new hash map. And now I'm just going to add all these symbols and their corresponding values into that map. Alright, so with that out of the way, what we're going to do now is we're going to create an integer called sum that's first equal to 0. And as we loop through our string, we're going to be adding the symbols corresponding values to the sum. So first we're going to create an int sum equals to 0. Then we're actually going to create an array of characters. We can call this C, which is equal to s dot to character array s. So the string s which they gave us, we're going to take each individual character and store it into a character array. I put an s here by mistake. We should remove that. Now I'm going to loop through the elements in our character array. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's create an int x equals to 0 as long as x is less than c dot length, and then x plus plus. Now we need to create an if statement which checks two conditions. First, that we're not out of bounds. So as we iterate through our array and we keep incrementing x, we need to make sure that x plus 1 does not exceed c dot length. The second condition we need to check is if we have two symbols where the first one is less than the one that follows it, for example IV. If that's the case, we're going to perform a subtraction before we add it to our sum. So let's see what that looks like now. So like I said, we need to create a condition to make sure we're not out of bounds. And then we need to check the second condition in case two consecutive symbols where the first one is less than the second one. So how we're going to do that is we're going to get from our map Roman, Roman integer dot get c at x, and let me put all this in, and we need to compare it to the element that comes after it. So if the value at Roman integer dot get c at x plus 1 is greater than the element at c at x, then we need to add to sum Roman integer dot get c at x plus 1 and subtract that with Roman integer dot get at c x. And then since we took into account so for example we had MC MX, so if we were here, since we took into account C and M, then we're gonna have to skip these two characters because we already went through them. And the way we're gonna do that simply is we're gonna increment x here, and once we find the new sum, we're going to increment x, and then we're going to leave our if statement. Eventually we're going to go back to our for loop, and x is going to be incremented again, and that way we took into account c and m, and now we're on to the next character, which is x. So finally, in the case where the value that comes before the next value isn't less than, so for example here mc, since m is greater than c, what do we need to do? We just need to add the value of m. So else sum plus equals Roman integer dot get value at c x. Finally, we just need to return sum. So let's submit our code and see if it works. I need to add in brackets here to account for this one. So let's submit again, see if it worked. Awesome. So that was the Roman to integer problem on LeetCode. Actually, let's go through this example very quickly. So after we put all our symbols and their corresponding values onto a map, we're going to turn this string into an array of characters, and we're going to loop through this array of characters. We need to check if our array is out of or the index that we're on is out of bounds, and then we're going to check, this is the most important condition, we're going to check if the value here is less than the value here, and this, or if the value at m is less than the value at c. There we go. If that it's not the case, so we're going to skip this block of code. We're going to go to the else statement. We're going to add a Roman integer.get c at x, which is c at 0. We're going to go to our map. C at 0 is m. So we're going to retrieve the value of our key m, which is 1000, and we're going to add it to sum. So sum is now equal to 1000. And then obviously in the for loop, x becomes 1. And we check this condition, and then we're checking if Roman integer.get c at 1, which is c, is less than m, because c at x plus 1, which it is. Then we're going to get the values of c at x plus 1, so the value at m, which is 1000, and subtract from it c at x, which is, or c at x is 2, which is m, which is 1000, and c at x, which is 1, which is going to be c, which is 100. So 1000 minus 100, that's 900, and we're going to add it to sum, which originally, or which was 1000, so we'd get 1900. Then we'd increment x, so now x would be equal to 2, but since we're going to the for loop, it's going to increment again, so x is actually equal to 3, because we took into account c and m together, and now we're at x, and you can go through the rest of the string yourself to see if it works. So I hope you found that video helpful, and thanks for watching.